Hello, welcome to another episode of Virtual Field Trips with Josh. Today we are going to be taking a trip to ancient Greece. So there's a lot of information to learn. I hope you enjoy it. As always, this video is brought to you by Center for Success. So let's go ahead and get started.
Ancient Greece, birthplace of democracy. Let's take a trip back in time to ancient Greece. It may seem that they lived too long ago and too far away to have any influence on our world of today. But this is not true. Anyone who lives in the Western world owes much to the ancient Greeks. They laid the foundation for much of our thoughts and beliefs, even today. We owe them a debt of gratitude for democratic government, trial by jury, study of philosophy, universities, many scientific ideas, plays, and theaters, the Olympic Games, and much more. The ancient Greek civilization dates back thousands of years, more than 4,000. They didn't have a reliable system for writing down their history and ideas until later, but they still left us with many valuable artifacts to help us understand life in ancient Greece. The era we will explore today goes back about 2,500 years. It is known as the Golden Age of Greece. This is the time when they developed many of the thoughts and ideas that are still with us today. 2,500 years ago, Greek settlements could be found all around modern-day Greece, Turkey, and other parts of the Mediterranean Sea. Their colonies developed into cities that ruled themselves separately, separate from any other cities. These are known as city-states, each one like a small nation. Two of the biggest and most important city-states were those around Athens and Sparta. Each city-state had its own government, money, culture, and identity. Most other nations at this time believed that the people should serve and obey their government, whether that was their king or emperor. The ancient Greeks turned that thinking around. They believed that the government should exist to serve its citizens. This is the essence of democracy. The word democracy itself comes from the Greek word demos, meaning citizen, and kratos, meaning power or rule. Their democratic government meant that each citizen could vote on laws and choose their leaders much as we do today. One difference is that these voting citizens did not include either women or slaves. They also ate fruits such as apples, pomegranates, and figs. Wine was the drink of choice, typical for much of the area at the time. The heart of Athens and many other city-states was the agora, an open marketplace. This is where people gathered, shopped for all their needs, and chatted with each other about the latest events. It is also where men conducted their everyday business, making it a very busy place. Women would usually only come to the agora to fill the family's water jugs at the public fountain, since houses did not have plumbing. Families often went to festivals, religious celebrations, weddings, births, and deaths. Many of these events were gatherings to both celebrate and compete, whether it was in athletics, weaving, music, or acting. Sporting events were especially popular. The Greeks recognized the connection between a healthy body and a healthy mind. The city-state of Sparta was more focused on sports and competitions than any other. Our lifestyle of training at the gym is an activity that has its roots in ancient Greece, particularly in Sparta. To ancient Greek thinking, the ideal person should always be training both mind and body. Popular everyday sports were wrestling, swimming, and horseback riding. The ancient athletes would compete in the games while spectators watched from their seats in the stadiums. We are still captivated by events like these, aren't we? Stadiums are still with us today, except that now they seat more people and they can be found around the world. Athletic contests took place locally at least once a year, when each city-state held its own games. Then, in 776 BC, the most famous and important of these games began in Olympia. They were dedicated to the god Zeus and became known as the Olympics. As one of the many legacies from ancient Greece, they are still taking place in modern times. As we still see today, athletes and spectators from all over the Greek world would attend. Combat sports such as wrestling and boxing were popular, along with a sport that is similar to mixed martial arts that we see today. Other contests included foot races, discus throwing, javelin throwing, broad jumping, and horse and chariot races. Winning was a profitable outcome for the competitors. First of all, athletes would immediately gain in the public's adoration, and a crown made of olive or laurel branches, public proof of their victory. Winners might receive a cash prize worth as much or more than a year's wages. Victors also received gold or silver cups and large jars of olive oil, all valuable items. Some even had statues made in their likeness and put on display. It is no wonder that they trained so faithfully. The rewards were huge. Their training also helped them to be ready for battle at any moment. And battles happened quite often, either with other city-states or other nations. When going off to war, Greek soldiers outfitted themselves with armor, a sword, and a shield, and a long spear. Alexander the Great is the most famous of the Greek warriors. He conquered one of the largest empires the world has ever known, even though he was just a very young man. The ancient Greeks would entertain themselves by telling and retelling stories about war heroes like Alexander. This collection of tales, legends, and myths was an important part of their culture and their history. They shared stories about their gods, how the world came into being, feats of human bravery, and so much more. Many of their sagas were shining examples of honor, skill, and courage. They came to life in sculptures, on coins, and on painted pottery. Over time, some of these tales have even become our own, part of the ancient Greek legacy. For example, many of us have heard about Hercules and his 12 labors. He was transformed into a god as his reward for these acts of skill and bravery. The legend of the Trojan horse is still being read about by children everywhere. So are the adventures of Jason and the Argonauts. Aesop, who was famous for his fables, was an ancient Greek. He wrote hundreds of moral stories like The Tortoise and the Hare, way back around 500 BC. Today, thousands of students still read and study the Iliad and the Odyssey. They were written by Homer, a Greek poet and storyteller who lived in Greece's early days. The ancient Greeks also invented the drama, especially dramatic plays. So it will come as no surprise to know that the theater was a central part of Greek life. Audiences might even sit through 3 or 4 plays at a time in open-air theater such as this one. Some of the theaters still exist and are even still being used for plays. Poets could also be found here, reciting their poetry for large crowds that would come from far and wide. Poems were a large part of everyday life and were often recited for weddings, harvests, victories, and other celebrations. Often, these poems were accompanied by music, maybe on a lyre, an ancient Greek stringed instrument. The Greeks believed that what physical training did for the body, music did for the soul. Festivals, sport competitions, banquets, and special occasions usually had a musical background. Orpheus is one of the famous ancient musicians. It is said that his music had the power to attract animals and birds. Dance was also very important to the ancient Greeks, just as it was for many civilizations both then and now. These performances were usually combined with religious events. For example, all public meetings began with prayers. So did athletic events, theater performances, and banquets. Prayers were one of 2 main religious rituals that were performed. The other ritual was to make religious offerings to the gods. These gifts were things like wine, sweets, or small statues. They felt the need for these offerings and sacrifices in order to stay on the good side of their gods. The ancient Greeks viewed their deities as being demanding, impatient, and easily offended. It was commonly thought that even if a single person offended a god, the entire community might suffer the punishment. Ceremonies were often performed both publicly and privately in order to calm and please the various gods. Offerings and sacrifices were usually made either as a request for a favor or as thanks for some good fortune. So just who were these touchy, sensitive, and demanding gods and goddesses? Well, first of all, the ancient Greeks believed in many gods, not just one, as many of us do today. All the forces of nature, such as the winds, the rivers, and the ocean, were thought to be ruled by one of the gods. Each of these deities had a human form. Although there were more than 100 gods, there was a group that was revered above all others. These gods are known as the Olympians. Mount Olympus, the highest point in Greece, was said to be their home. From the top of the world, the gods could keep an eye on the everyday life of humans, keeping everyone and everything in order. As a result of their actions, humans might either be punished or rewarded by the gods. Let's find out a bit more about this all-powerful group. The god above all other gods and mortals was Zeus. He was the god of justice and the lord of the sky. He was also the guardian of world harmony. If he was angered or wanted to show his power, he would throw thunderbolts through the sky. To the mortals on earth, these were bolts of lightning. His wife, Hera, was another of the Olympians. She was the goddess of marriage. She was also the protector of family and married women. Zeus had 3 brothers. The best known is probably Poseidon. He was the god of the sea. His trademark is his trident, the 3-pronged fork symbolizing his power. A storm at sea was thought to be a sign of his displeasure or maybe his unpredictable moods. Another brother, Hades, ruled in the underworld, not on Mount Olympus. In the underworld, Hades would oversee the souls who lived on after death in their mortal lives. Zeus' daughter, Athena, was of great importance as the goddess of wisdom. She is often shown in full battle gear, even though she disliked war. Instead, she would inspire skill to help her heroes win their battles. The idea to use the Trojan horse is said to be an example of her inspiration. Demeter was a very important goddess, since she ruled over crops and farming, which families depended on for their food. She was also the goddess of fertility, which allowed family bloodlines to continue and grow. Zeus' son, the god Apollo, served many important roles. He ruled over many of the mysteries of life. Nothing was more mysterious than the human body, and so he was god of healing. He also taught humans about prophecy, art, poetry, archery, and music. His gift of prophecy was valuable to the Greeks, and many would visit his oracle at Delphi when a glimpse into the future was necessary. The oracle was a priestess who would provide advice to those who came to ask important questions, such as whether to go into battle or who to marry. It was believed that Apollo would speak through the oracle and answer questions in this manner. Apollo had a very well-known sister, the goddess Artemis, who is also his twin. She is the goddess of the hunt and the protector of animals and young women. She is typically seen carrying a bow. Then there was Hermes, the messenger god. He also looked after those traveling from place to place. Aphrodite was the goddess of love and desire. She was also said to have been the most beautiful of the goddesses. The god of war was Ares. He was the son of Zeus and Hera. Hephaestus was the god of fire. His wife was Aphrodite. He was also the patron god of crafts made from fire, like blacksmithing. Hestia was the goddess of home, hearth, and peace. She was the sister of Zeus Lastly, there was Dionysus. He was the god of wine and earthly pleasures, like the theater and banquets. Gods were believed to be able to appear on earth to keep an eye on each of their areas of responsibility. Each city-state adopted a patron god or goddess, and honoring their protector was an important part of their local culture and identity. The city of Athens was protected by and dedicated to Athena. Their gods had superhuman qualities such as exceptional courage, skills, and intelligence. They were also thought to be able to control and contribute to a family's riches. To their thinking, a household could not be successful without honoring the gods. A poor crop season might be a sign that Demeter was dishonored somehow. The tales of their gods' origins and deeds live on in a huge collection of Greek myths and legends. In this way, their gods have truly achieved immortality. The ancient Greek legacy to us is bigger than just their mythology. They have given us democracy, which is the basis for governments around much of the Western world, the Olympics and all stadiums and spectator sports is an athletic tradition that will likely continue for centuries to come. Lastly, they have left us with a rich body of literature, including Aesop's fables, the Iliad, and the Odyssey. What the ancient Greeks did, thought, dreamed, and lived all those years ago lives on in our lives today. And they continue to inspire our thinking all these years later.
Thank you for joining us on that trip. I hope you had fun. If you have any comments, you can leave them down below on this video. We enjoy spending this new form of community with you, and we hope you will join us next time for another trip where we go somewhere else in the world.